With Halloween fast approaching, it's the perfect time to examine the horror movie genre and dissect what keeps us coming back for more. For producers, making horror movies is so appealing as there's a constant demand for it, and the movies can actually be made with a very limited budget. Big blockbusters might cost 200 or 300 million to make, so that they can then earn back 800 million at the box office. But a horror movie done right can be made for a modest budget. For example, The Conjuring cost 20 million to make, The Purge 3 million, or as an extreme example, Paranormal Activity cost just $15,000. And all three then earned back hundreds of millions of dollars. This makes horror movies a safe return on investment if you, the audience, actually want to see it. But what is it that makes us enjoy horror movies? It's not like we're chasing after unique stories, but more so a tried and true formula, with some new creative tweaks that cause just the right amount of adrenaline or cortisol to pump around your body to at least give the illusion that you had a good time. So let's examine how to craft the perfect horror movie for your Halloween viewing. This is 13 key elements every popular horror movie needs. Number 1. A creepy opening scene. This is the scene that prepares the audience for the type of threat our heroes are up against, and the type of ride that we're in for. Usually it involves an unsuspecting victim just living their normal life, when suddenly they are attacked by the monster. It could be a modern-day murder of someone in the neighborhood, or someone who accidentally unleashes an evil spirit, or it could even be from decades or centuries ago, acting as a sort of prologue to the story. Number 2. Something new. You could define this as the inciting incident to an extent, but most horror stories involve something new being introduced that changes everything for the protagonist. For example, the most common theme through horror movies, especially on Netflix, is New Home, in which a family move into a new home that turns out to be haunted, or puts them in direct danger.
Would you like to see the upstairs?
Yes, I would.
It could be built on an Indian burial ground, or have a history of tragedy hosted inside of it. This is for a few reasons. Firstly, it means the characters are unfamiliar with the territory, which means that they have to learn with us. Secondly, it makes them more vulnerable as they don't know the area. And thirdly, it's because a home is supposed to be a safe nest for humans, and we all have a natural built-in anxiety of intruders or anything that makes our home feel unsafe. The something new could also be a gift that is bought in an antique store, or a new object that is found outdoors and wrongly brought into the home. This could be a doll, a book, a videotape, a camera, a board game, a sort of box thingy, literally anything. However, these are for stories that involve evil spirits or possession. If it's a slasher movie, it's usually about going to a new house or cabin on what is meant to be a fun party trip. Or a psychopathic killer escapes from somewhere and is now coming for them in their homes. Thematically, it's always about containment, either of the vulnerable characters being stranded somewhere remote and having to barricade themselves inside, or a violent killer escaping containment and being unleashed on an unsuspecting neighborhood. Number 3. An easily recognized, unrecognizable monster. All horror movies are monster movies, just sometimes that monster turns out to be human. The monster is either a mysterious evil spirit, an unknown creature, or a human wearing a mask, which renders them unrecognizable. This way, it could be anyone underneath, either someone we know or a total stranger, and both are terrifying in different ways. The mask needs to be easily recognizable so that merchandise can be sold. If your monster is forgettable looking, then a lot of the time, so is your movie. But masks are not always necessary. If the monster is someone you know who is possessed, then the terror must come from them behaving unrecognizably, either through physical derangement or their voice being hijacked. Number 4. The victims should be young or vulnerable. Most of the time, the lead characters in horror movies are teenagers, children, or women. Grown men get killed in every other type of movie, so we're relatively desensitized to it. But for a child, a teenager, or a woman to be senselessly killed, it shows that the monster has no limits at all. The more innocent the victims, the more vulnerable the audience will feel. Number 5. Troubled history. The protagonist usually has some sort of troubled history, like a parent who died or was killed early in their life. This is for two reasons. Firstly, so no one will believe their kooky theories, dismissing them as traumatized or simply making the whole thing up.
Why would she lie about it? For attention. The girl has some serious issues.
And secondly, so the protagonist can have a personal issue to overcome that subsequently unlocks their ability to destroy the villain. Number 6. Weird stuff is happening. Unlike the opening scene where the unsuspecting character just gets immediately killed, for the protagonist, weird stuff starts happening.
It's all for you!
This creates curiosity, but not confirmation, that something is wrong. Maybe their friend goes missing, or they feel as if they're being stalked, or things are moving around the house. Whatever it is, something weird is happening, but it's not clear as to why. This means that when you go to authority figures like parents or the police, they are totally useless and dismiss the lead characters as crazy.
And now this thing inside the camera is gonna come here.
Thing inside the camera?
I know how it sounds.
This feeds into our personal fears, that when we find ourselves scared of a potential threat, that we will be left to fend for ourselves. Number 7. Being hunted. Now that the lead character is somewhat aware of the threat, they're prepared, and lucky for them, the spooky ghost or killer seems to just be teasing them for some reason. This allows us to get a closer look at the threat as they stalk around our home, as we, via the character, hide in a closet or under the bed. These scenes are often long and drawn out as the monster's footsteps or presence is felt as it gets closer and closer and closer, making our decision to hide feel foolish. Number 8. Fun and games. Now that we have the rest of our setup already in place, it's time for some fun and games. This is where the typical horror tropes come into play, like jump scares that are actually nothing.
It's just me.
Dogs having a sixth sense about evil. Endless sketches of the evil spirit. Balls rolling into shot from nowhere. Mirrors being terrifying. Photographs predicting death. Opening doors, despite all of us thinking, for God's sakes, obviously don't go in there. Figures walking by doorways behind you, or the classic, he's far away, oh wait, where is he? Right next to you. Number 9, the hunt for information. Now that the lead characters are terrified that their death is just a matter of time, they now must seek out as much new information as they can from old newspaper articles, library books, local doctors, priests, nuns, weird neighbors, or previous traumatized survivors. This is what provides real context for what's going on, whether it's the history of the killer, the history of the spirit, or the history of the haunted building. And that leads us to number 10, establish the rules of the world. From the limited evidence we have so far, the lead characters, who are now bonding because no one else believes them or cares, often reiterate the rules that they've learned about the monster so far. This might be a time they arrive, somewhere they don't go, or something that scares them away. This helps to plant and pay off scary moments later, as now that the audience understands the rules, they understand the threat level when the characters don't obey them.
You say his name 5 times. He'll appear behind you, breathing down your neck.
Don't ever feed him after midnight.
This thing, it's gonna follow you. Somebody gave it to me, and I passed it to you.
Number 11, the iconic shot. Every classic horror movie has its iconic shot. It could be looking up at a window, the hero looking petrified, the monster emerging or staring at you, the hero and villain meet face to face, an infamous death scene, or a set piece that solidifies the uniqueness of the story. Number 12, getting trapped. Now that the characters have all the information they need, it's time for a final showdown. But it needs to be in a confined space. Whether they're trapped in the monster's childhood home or the evil spirit's location of trauma, either way, we are physically locked in and there is nowhere to go. Now we all have to face our fears together. And finally, lucky number 13, relief for now. Despite having attempted some stupid plan like,
We should split up. We can cover more ground that way.
either the characters escape, the monster is defeated, or the tortured ghost's problems are resolved and it pisses off. But don't be too quick to resolve the issue fully. We have to leave the audience with some fear that this threat is still out there and could be coming for them. which conveniently sets up an infinite number of sequels to cash in on. Usually this ends with the new object being found by some new unsuspecting person or the killer escaping, despite how clearly dead they were just moments ago. So that's 13 key elements you need to create the perfect popular horror movie, and whatever movie you watch this Halloween, you can be guaranteed that they will each hit the majority of these points. And that's okay. Horror movies are not meant to break the mold every time. They're meant to be a thrill ride, an opportunity to face your fears or find out what truly petrifies you. Whether it's the dark, the unknown, or the gentle creaking of a door late at night when you know you're the only one home. It could have just been a gust of wind, or it could have been the sound of a bloodthirsty lunatic slipping into your home undetected, hiding in the shadows, just waiting for you to turn off that light so he has a chance to strike. Anyway, sleep well, and happy Halloween. This is a new channel, so don't forget to like and subscribe, and tune in to the next video.